have seen how a data center audit is conducted. Now let's see how an application software will be audited. What are the things that you have to see? You have to identify significant application components and flow of transactions. Meaning, what is the architecture of the application? Whether it is a 2-tier application or a 3-tier application. What is the flow of transaction? What is the intended use of the application? How the application works? Does it need any dependencies for running the software? Then identify the controls which are present in the software and evaluate their effectiveness. For example, if it is a web-based application and if there is a login screen, what are the controls put in there? Whether the transmission goes via HTTPS, whether password policies are implemented. If it is a 2-tier application or a client-server based application, then how the login management works. Then you test the controls, input, processing, output. Then you analyze the results to determine whether control is working as expected. If it is not working, then you write a report and submit it to the management for corrective actions to be taken. Then you conduct a compliance audit or one more round of audit to make sure or ensure that the vulnerabilities or the weaknesses that are found during the audit are rectified. You check transaction validations. Now this particular slide, the contents have been taken from the CISA review manual of 2009, where you check for transaction validations like sequence check, where the sequence number used causes out of sequence and duplicate numbers to be rejected. Suppose you have an application where it indexes or the primary key is auto-generated. You will have to see whether the sequence numbers are in order or if anything has been missed. If something has been missed, why it has been missed. Then you check for limit or range check. So if you have specified that one particular field will take only a range between $1 and $3,000, whether the checks exceed $3,000 or are below 1, that has to be checked. Validity check or table lookup, only certain values can be accepted. For example, the gender, which is male or female, it should not accept numeric values. Reasonableness check, suppose a nut and bolt is ordered from a particular supplier and the order is say 100 nuts and bolts. That is the limit that is set for that vendor. Whether you can buy 1,000 from them, or here an example is given, a takeout order of 100 pizza, it's not reasonable. It can be 1 pizza, 2 pizzas, 10 pizzas, a value of 100. So the reasonableness of the quantity entered is also verified. Then existence checks. Required fields are entered correctly. There are, when you go to a website or when you go to an application where it asks you for filling the details, there will be red asterisk marks which says that these are mandatory values. And then there are other optional fields also. So existence check will verify whether the required fields are entered correctly. Key verification. This generally happens in the financial or insurance industry where input is double checked via a second person, which is a maker-checker concept. Or all digits are entered twice just to identify the content of that field. In some places you would have encountered enter your email twice. Don't cut and paste there. So that's to ensure that the value you entered is correct. So if the first one does not match with the second one, then the transaction is rejected. Check digit. A digit may verify the correct entry of other digit. Completeness check. If complete input is provided, zeros or spaces are checked for each So instead of entering a value, you just put 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 or press space 5 times. Whether that is checked. Then duplicate transactions or transactions with duplicate IDs are checked. If it is a duplication, it is rejected. So in accounting entries, you will find that this facility is there. Accounting software packages like Tally have inbuilt provision. If enabled, can check this. Then consistency and logical relationship check. That is to ensure that data is consistent with other known data. For example, an employee's date of birth must be at least 16 years old or 18 years old. Or when the bank opens the account for a minor, it should verify the date of birth field to check that he is less than 18 years old to be classified as a minor. So these are the transaction validation checks that will have to be performed on an application software. Then you have processing controls, where transactions are checked on a per transaction basis. Editing is one of the criteria, that is, the program tests the accuracy, completeness, and validity of data. Then it checks on the calculated amounts, that is, calculated values are checked to be reasonable or not exceed the maximum limit. Programmed control, that is the software to detect, log, and initiate corrective actions for errors. So it's kind of a self-error correction mechanism. Per batch, batch means a group of transactions. So batch totals are recorded manually to be compared with the system totals. Run-to-run totals, each processing stage reports its calculated batch controls. Then reconciliation, supervisor should review that all data was properly recorded and processed. So why a star is given before all is, each and every transaction that has been entered should be verified to ensure that it has been properly recorded and it has been properly processed. Then you have data file controls. Here you check for pre-recorded input. Certain information fields are pre-printed on a blank input form to reduce input errors. Then data file security ensures that only authorized people can access. The correct version of a file should always be used. An audit trail which records the date, the time, the input that was made, the user ID, from which terminal it was made, and what transactions have gone through, that also should be there. Audit trail is a very crucial aspect of any software, wherein the organization and the auditors can check for any happenings which are out of the ordinary. Then you have before and after image reporting, where the file data is recorded before processing and after processing. So you have two images. One, how the data was, what was input, what was processed, what is the output. So then you have a data with the different characteristics. So you have the original data, you have the processed data, you have the new data. Then you have parity checking. When data is transmitted, check codes are added to ensure that data is transmitted without the errors. Similarly here for batch processing, error reporting and handling, all error reports are properly reconciled and authorizations or corrections are submitted in a very timely manner. One-for-one checking. Source documents should correctly describe the processing that has occurred. Then the source document retention. Source documents are retained as necessary for error handling and audits. Here, source handling document retention is the voucher you make for your deposit slip. It's a source document. So that the bank will hold it in a facility for regulatory requirements, for audits, for other requirements also, like error handling, where the problem has happened, who has made that particular entry, so all this. Then internal and external labeling. The storage media should be labeled correctly to ensure that correct processing happens. You don't inadvertently insert a tape which is outdated. So these are the data file control procedures. An extension of the data file control procedure itself, we go a little more into database security. What does it ensure? Database security, or when you secure a database, it ensures that only authorized users can perform authorized activities at authorized time. Now here the key word is authorized. So users perform activity at different times. So that is basically what database security aims to achieve. Now breaches can happen in databases also. Data observation is one kind of breach where it results in disclosure of information to users who are not entitled to gain access to such information. For example, in some websites you have database errors cropping up which shows the version information, the database version number, maybe the path of the table where that particular record is stored. So data observation is one kind of a breach. So you manipulate the system to bring out data observation errors. The second is your incorrect data modification, which results in an incorrect database state. That means when you do something, incorrect modification of data, the database state is not stable. Something else happens to the database. Either it crashes or some other processing errors occurs. Then the third is data unavailability or non-availability, which results in database not being accessed by the users, which will again result in productivity loss because database is not available. Look at some of the largest database breaches, including the one which happened in 2014, Sony Corporation. This source is from Privacy Rights Clearinghouse. The URL is also given. Now, if you see the amount or number of affected customers, it is a huge number. The smallest one was 1,600 of US Army, Symantec, which is 200. But then the largest goes in millions. So the database breaches also happen quite a lot. Sony being one, the latest one, which happened in 2014. So, but what are the goals of database security, or three goals of database security? We have seen over and over again in this course. CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. The same goals apply to database security also. Now, in this context, confidentiality refers to protection of data against unauthorized disclosure. Integrity refers to prevention of unauthorized and improper data modification. And availability refers to the prevention and recovery from hardware and software errors and from malicious data access, making the database system unavailable. So basically to protect against destruction of database or loss of data. Let's see a simple example. Let's consider a payroll database. The salaries should not be released to unauthorized individuals. Nobody else should know what the other is drawing, the database itself. Then salaries should be only modified by those who are properly authorized to do so. And then paychecks should be paid on time. So in this example, you can have, let's say that there are 20 employees in an organization. One particular employee wants to know what the other person is drawing. So he does a SQL query on the database. First he asks how many employees are there in the organization. So then the database prints out 20. How many are male? It prints out 6. How many are females is automatically inferred. Then what is the average salary, total salary paid to all male employees? It gives a figure. So he gets the value of what is the salary paid to all female employees. Then he further filters down to say, now for this role or this position in the organization, what is the salary paid? So he selects that particular thing from the table and then he runs a query. So he can do an inference check and find out what is the salary paid to some other employee. So this is an example for a payroll database. Let's see some common database threats. Default accounts and passwords, as in the network or as in the server or as in the application, the same thing applies here. Default accounts and passwords. Easily guessed password. Let's keep it simple around like ABC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is an issue. Missing patches, again like OS, the security patches as and when released by the vendor should be applied immediately. The database not configured properly, or default database which come along with the database when installing it is there, so no proper filtering is done. Then excessive privileges are given to certain users. That is a vulnerability. From the external perspective, web application attacks like SQL injection can happen. Insider errors or mistakes can happen. Weak or non-existent audit controls. So the audit logging criteria is not there. It is there but no controls over what is logged. Then social engineering could be another threat which can happen from outside. How do you implement database security? Determine users' processing rights and responsibilities. So the first thing you do is understand what the user needs, what rights he requires to perform his job. Then enforce the security requirements using security features from both the database management system and the application programs. So it is not enough to restrict your DBMS itself. You need to provide controls in the application that connects to the database also. There's an example breach. Monster database, there was a security breach on January 23rd, 2009. The URL is given there. Now here, Monster was a target of illegal attempt. So some people try to access it and extract information from the database. So Monster learned that their database was illegally accessed and certain contact and account data were taken, including the user IDs and password, email addresses, names, phone numbers, and some other basic data. Now the information access does not include resumes. So basically Monster is a portal where the resumes are uploaded and downloaded. But this particular hack did not involve hacking the resumes. And then it also says that Monster does not generally collect and the access information does not include sensitive data such as social security numbers or personal financial data. This is what the statement was given by Monster. But then the hackers managed to find user IDs and password, fine. Email addresses, names, phone numbers. So they had a lot of information by which they can do impersonation attacks, which is not mentioned here. So there are other attacks that can happen, which has not been mentioned here. But according to Monster, they say that since financial data was not stolen, and financial data here is critical, and social security numbers were not stolen, they say it's pretty okay. Most of the database management products which are available in the market, whether it is open source or commercial, they provide security facilities and features. So they limit certain actions on certain objects to certain users or certain groups. So certain actions means read, write, execute is an action on certain objects. Object can be a table within the database. To certain users means it is available or accessible only by the SA or the administrator or the root. Or groups, maybe the administrator group, the user group. So whatever role is being allocated, so they can limit actions on certain objects to certain users. And all database products use some form of username and password security. So the basic security of accessing the database, that is username and password, is available with almost every database product. Then planning. Develop a security plan for preventing and detecting security problems. So you need to have a proper plan to prevent and detect security problems. So for that, you will have to understand how the DBMS has been configured, what does it intend to serve, then create procedures for security emergencies and practice them, like if there is a database failure, what happens? If there is a virus attack or major attack from an internal source, what happens? Again, here, internal versus external. So some threats are external, but many are internal. So when it comes to database hacks, many are internal. So you need to particularly emphasize the importance of database in an environment where more